In this video, I'm going to give a quick explanation of Dex, a new application I'm working on. It's in the early stages, but I wanted to get some feedback. So Dex is basically a Wikidata, but a smaller one that's easier for users or organizations to set up, and is all based on static files. So what that looks like, this is a first iteration. Over here on the right side, I have some static files. This is all TOML, which is an alternative to YAML that is a bit leaner and newer, and thus obviously cooler. So basically, we say right now we're stating properties. So one property is name, the top thing is ID. I'll give a quick tour, and then I'll give a slightly more detailed one. So these are all the properties. We have a few people. These were just taken from the Future Humanity Institute website. A few different types of data types, and then a little bit of information about Dex itself. And from that, we get this information on the left, which is an explorer for the relevant information here. So over here, you could see all the, basically each thing is called a thing. That's from schema.org. So we have a bunch of names on the left. And if I click on one, so I'm going to click on the Future Humanity Institute, then I could see the information about it. These all use triples, so it just puts that in the format. Each one has an ID that has to be unique. It's important that that stays unique. And then in this case, there are a bunch of people who are registered as employees on the Future Humanity Institute. So if you go to me, I'll say that I'm working on DEX, and DEX has a list of possible names, and here are a few names I'm still thinking about. So that's a very quick demo. I'm curious to get takes, and now I'm going to go a little bit more into detail if you're interested, but feel free to skip from this point. So going back to the right, just to show you the format that I'm currently using. So basically, don't worry about this for now. This is using TOML, which is a bit interesting. I suggest reading about it separately. But this over here is basically the key, and that's the ID for this. So that's n-property, which if I go here, you'll see that this has n-property. And this has a name, which basically means that if it's a triple, this would be the noun, this would be the verb, and this would be the value. In this case, the value is a string, which you get from the fact that if you look at name, its data type is a string. Of course, string itself is an actual thing. So that's, if you look at data types, you'll see that D string is a type of data. I'm trying to figure out how meta to make this. Obviously, it could go quite meta. Wikidata is also pretty meta. My guess is that I may add a schema layer on top of this. It probably requires a few more layers on top of this. But this seems like a good first pass for like the very basics. Yeah, instance of is a pretty important one. Inverse name is really if you have an instance of, and if you're going the other way. So for instance, an organization has an instance list, which is basically, this is kind of boring, but for the Future Humanity Institute, it's instance of, and then it's organization, but if you go the other way, then it's just instance to get to Future Humanity Institute. So yeah, so the basics of this are really just you have your key or your unique identifier. Then you have a list of the properties you basically want to add, and for each one, the value that that property should have. The next aspect of this right now is templates, which really aren't doing this much at the moment, but may later. I'm trying to decide if that makes sense. And basically here, it just allows you to declare a template on the top, and then you could add any properties to this that you want. Name is probably a poor choice, but that just allows it to be inherited by all of these items. And some of the other stuff, over here you'll see that we have this inverted thing. So I basically wanted to state that all of these people were employed by NFHI without stating that, without having to write like a whole chunk for each one. So this is like a convenient notation for that. Another interesting notation that I have is over here where we have generators. And the purpose here is I basically wanted to declare that, I'll go to this, Dex. Yeah. Yeah, so this is what I wanted. Basically, there are a few different name candidates, but each one of them is technically a thing, but I didn't want to declare it as its own whole unit. So the way that this works is, the system's kind of triggered, so meta generators is a special keyword that basically allows you to auto-generate these names and come up with IDs for them. In this case, the IDs end up just being, if you click on it, you'll find out just a dex name, which is a prefix here, followed by the number that it shows up in the table. So that's the kind of thing that, like, if you base something on that, if you reference this from somewhere else and then switch this around, it'll break. But there are a lot of cases where that's not very important. So basically here, you just add properties, and then it'll apply it to everything that's generated. And then in the table, this is kind of nice. Just the columns, right now the only column that I'm adding for each thing is a name. But if I wanted to add p description, this is useful for y. Basically this would allow me to create a custom data table where each row would basically be its own item, and all of the properties would be filled in for it. So yeah, so right now that's like the main heart of it. The application is pretty simple. It's just a few lines of JavaScript and then a React application that just shows it. So you may be wondering why someone would use this. Well, the nice thing is that the purpose of this is to make the file storage, or like really the document storage, as convenient as possible. And what that means is that these files are meant to be as readable as possible, specifically for editing. So on GitHub, the idea is that like all of this could be logged in GitHub, and over there, maintenance and admin could be done via pull requests, and that way you don't have to have permissions done in another way. GitHub is already great for permissions. So for people who are able to understand how the system works and mess with this stuff, then hopefully GitHub could just like handle all the permissions, and you have version control built in. Eventually, maybe we could do some meta stuff to integrate versioning information into the fact base. And overall, it does make things quite simple. There's no database to run, so you could just import any knowledge base into an existing web application, or just show it anywhere in the web. In the future, there's a lot of cool stuff I'd like to see hypothetically done if this seems to work further. But right now, it is still like very early, and I'm just trying to get a sense of what works the best. So yeah, please, I feel very much like, I'm making a lot of choices when I do this, and that's the kind of thing where I would like to get some feedback fairly soon, because that could have those could have big changes later on. So yeah, if you have any comments or anything, I'd be very thankful for that. Thank you.